All right, welcome back to the Ian S. Hoover Show. I have my faithful attorney at law slash good friend of mine, Matt Beam, in the studio with me. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This has been a long time coming. Actually, if I would have done the math properly, I would have realized that 2 episodes ago would have been the time to have you on because it was episode number 50. You
Um,
would have been the highlight episode
I
there, but
I didn't realize this was a comedy show too. Uh, that's good. I'm almost 50. That's
no, it had nothing to do with your date of birth. I just thought like it was it was a nice milestone.
right, right. So just before this, he was commenting on my hair graying out, and I just said I was pushing 50. So don't believe anything he tells you.
No, I'm being 100% serious. I was like, damn, I was thinking this morning, I was like, I should have had him on 2 episodes ago, so it would have been number 50, and it would have been somebody that I really cherish and admire.
Ah,
Yeah, you are the smartest person. Okay, most highly educated person I know.
highly educated.
Yeah,
Every attorney's been to school for 7 years. I don't know.
yeah, but you were an engineer first by trade, which is
That's
already
true.
a hard degree to get, right?
It was harder than law for sure.
Was it really?
At least the the subject matter was
Okay.
much more difficult to figure out. I mean, I took some engineering classes where you had one problem and worked in groups to figure out one problem, and it would take you 3 hours. So, law is not complicated regarding the subject matter. What's difficult about law school is most of your classes, you have one exam. End of the year, end of the semester, one exam, and you're competing against people who are, generally the top whatever percent from undergrad, and you have 3 hours to show what you've taken in all semester, and you better perform well, and sometimes say what the professor wants to hear. I mean, for the most part, there's that angle is not always there, but con law and some things, you have professors with certain thoughts or biases, and I always write what I think the professor wants to hear. Now, a class like property or something like that doesn't really come into play, but um, yeah, you pay attention to the professor during the semester. Some classes they have a midterm that's quarter of your grade, or I think some classes even have like writing finals and things like that. But for the most part, it's especially your first year when your grades matter the most, because if you want to go work for a large firm, which I never did, it's all based on your first year grades. Because
Hmm.
at the end of first year, you have your certain GPA and you have to be top 10% to get law review. I would have been on the journal, except I had a grade changed because of the randomness of my small section. There were 9 small sections. My small section had too many high achievers in it. So I had an A minus change to a B plus, and that random thing kept me off the journal. So, I still put in my resume back then, like top 15% or something. But there was someone with a lower GPA than me who was on, and I wasn't, but they were in a different small section, or I don't know. That was kind of frustrating.
I'm
But
gonna have to get you to stick a little closer to the mic though.
oh, sure.
It's when you turn your head or whatever, it's kind of dropping you off. But I'm surprised. So like that actually matters, like where your GPA, like where you ranked in your class, when you go out, like graduate and get you, because you have to pass the bar, right?
Well, it matters if you want to go work at a large firm.
Mm.
That's where it matters, because they do what's called OCI, which is on campus interviewing. And they come on and they want to start with everyone on law review, which is top 10%. And there's another journal that's top 15%. So if you're not on either of those, my one roommate had an interview and he said half the interview they just peppered him on why he didn't make one of the journals. It's like all they want to know. Why didn't you make one of the journals? And it was frustrating for me because, again, sort of randomness of why I was not on it. Um, but I got interviews with some big firms. Blank Room in Philadelphia was one that interviewed me, and everyone else got their rejection letter, my friends, and I didn't. And they were taking, this was in Philadelphia, they were taking 15, and I was the first alternate, which every other year someone would say no thanks. But I guess some magazine came out and named them the top summer program in the country, and all 15 accepted. And the partner called me and said, I tried to go to bat for you to get a 16th spot. But I'm actually glad that it panned out that way because, the smaller firm is better for me. Uh, I'd rather have a 8-person firm and do some things well. That's we just hired 2 new associates. They're finishing third year of school now. And that's one of the things I had to sell to them because if you go to the big firm, yeah, you'll start out at the pretty high initial salary, more than we can pay them. But you're also going to work a ton. My roommate went to, I won't say the name, but they went to a big firm downtown. We never saw him, gone at 5 in the morning, home late at night, down there on Saturdays, half the time on Sunday. And, we were several years in and, he had never seen a courtroom or had a client or anything. And he made more money, but you make that more money up front. My one associate now, he's 3 years in, he's already making double what he did before because we give them the opportunity to get their own clients and give them a percentage of what they bring in. So yeah, and we told both the guys we just hired who accepted that you can make more if one of the bigger firms, if they'll hire you. Again, going
Hmm.
back to the law review thing, but in the long run, I'd rather go the small to the medium route, which is what I did.
Interesting. You were what type of engineer were you?
So when I first went to Penn State, I was a meteorology major. Uh, I was always loved tornadoes and hurricanes and everything, but
I could actually see you doing like the weather report on the news.
that's what I thought I was going to do for a while. Then things changed and I switched to environmental engineering with an air specialization and had some interviews out of school, had one in North Carolina for a called atmospheric dispersion modeling company, which is what my senior thesis was. It was the perfect job offer. I always wanted to move to the Carolinas, but I had another interview in Delaware shortly thereafter, and that was a bigger, kind of younger company, offered me a lot more money too. So I was in Delaware, and it was an environmental software company, and I really liked the software stuff. I was in software design, and then eventually I moved over to be a programmer, software engineer, and then I decided to go to law school originally to be a patent attorney. Um, about halfway through law school, I realized I probably didn't want to do that. So I graduated and kind of needed a job. So I worked at a family law firm for a while. I really did not like family law. It was not for me. You have to have a certain, I guess, personality, or maybe not even that, just you have to be able to really separate the work from your personal life. I think they really threw me in the fire. My first trial was 6 months out of school. About a year in, this is when I knew this wasn't for me, but I did a custody trial. And I didn't even have kids at that point, but that was awful going through the emotions of all that. People are scraping money together to pay for the trial, and you're going to get my daughter, aren't you? And just the pressure of that more than anything I do now, because now it's real estate business law. We handle litigation, but it's companies, and there isn't the emotion that's in family law. I mean, this is like, we should settle this. It's a business expense. Think how much trial is going to cost, blah, blah, blah. That's like, I might lose my kids.
Right. I thought you were going to say you needed empathy.
Now I would catch myself at home, before I did that trial. I don't think I slept the whole weekend before. And of course, we settled the morning of, but I couldn't let a lot of it go. And then just the unreasonableness of clients in family law, because, you have two people going through the emotions of a divorce, and then there's all their assets and the kids involved, and, they sometimes take it out on you, and whether it's fair or not, it just wasn't for me. So, I switched about probably 15 years ago soon.
Hmm. Yeah, I would equate that to something I went through, which was like when I got into T-Mobile pretty early. I was 18. Actually, got into wireless before I was 18. And when I decided I want to get out of wireless, I was like, I'm going to go into banking, right? Because I saw this is pre 2008. I saw all these guys making just crazy money doing loans, right? And I met with a loan Chase Bank at the time to be a loan officer, and they're like, well, we really would like to see you have like 2 years experience before we, just give this to you. So I went to work for a company called City Financial. Do you know who that is?
It rings a
It's
bell.
Citibank, but it's like an arm of Citibank. I don't even think they own City Financial anymore. I think they sold it off to a different company. But they were basically loan sharks. So what they would do is they would lend to people who couldn't qualify traditionally for a loan at ridiculously high interest rates. And then what these people would do is they would, they get like a $7,500 personal loan to pay off their credit cards. But then we wouldn't make them close their credit cards, and they would rack up their credit cards again and come back to us and get another $5,000 to pay off their credit cards and do it all over again. And then they'd put a lien on their house at 17.5% to pay out all over again. We would never force them to close their cards because this was their scheme. And then they would eventually file for bankruptcy. And I'm just like, after like 6 months, I was just like, I can't do this. Like, I had like 7 people file for bankruptcy in like my first like 6 months, and I'm just like, I can't do this. So I went back to wireless after that.
It was crazy back then. The loans they were giving out with no verification of income or assets, or what was that, Nina? No income, no assets.
Yeah, my first mortgage was in 2007, and I they just asked me how much money. It's like kind of going to a car dealership. They just ask you how much money that you make. They don't really verify that information. And then they check my credit, which is I think over 600, right? Because I had a credit card pretty early on, and then I was 19 years old. And they're like, yeah, you're approved. And they just gave me the loan, 100% financing. And then I negotiated, I think it was 12% seller's assist. So I ended up walking from closing with like 3 or 4 grand in my pocket. I was like, if the light bulb would have went off, I would have bought like 10 more properties that year probably. But instead I just bought the one. And then the 2008, the whole world fell apart. But so speaking of Penn State, I'm wearing my
Mhm.
Fort Cherry gear today. And our quarterback just committed to Penn State. I don't think he's going to be a quarterback though. I think he's going to be probably a safety or maybe a slot wide receiver or something.
Oh,
He's real fast and shifty, but
yeah, a lot of high school quarterbacks aren't necessarily going to play quarterback. Even the tight end we have now, Tyler Warren, was a quarterback in high school. He's probably the
yeah,
best tight end in the country now.
they clearly just went after talent. They said, okay, this kid's talented. We're going to get him and we'll figure out where to place him. But he does have
Right.
like, what, I think in 2 years, because he's a junior now, I think he's got like 8 or 9 interception returns for touchdowns on defense. He plays both ways, so he's a pretty talented kid. You guys will enjoy him.
Yeah, you can have fun going 11-1 and losing to Ohio State.
Well, that's
Well,
just what you guys do every year.
I could do
So
a podcast on that for an hour.
you probably should.
Frustrations. You know what's funny? I had my phone out earlier and I was, how Facebook shows you your post you made a long time ago. I made a post 8 years ago. It must have been right after we beat Ohio State at home because it said something about Penn State being back in the top 10 again, which I know we weren't. I know it must have been a couple games after that we eventually, because they were 2 and we were unranked in the game. But I was thinking, oh my God, that's the last time we beat them. It's 8 years. I think that series was before this run they've had of 8. I think that series was only like Ohio State, maybe +4 against us all time. Like they had
Yeah,
won more, but not a lot more against us. But this streak of 8 is just,
it could be worse. I mean, it's been what, I'm 37, and I was 9 years old last time the Cowboys were in an NFC Championship game.
what
Yeah,
year were you born?
87.
87. So were you a Cowboys fan when you were like a little kid?
I became a Cowboys fan pretty early on. I think I was about 4 when I was a Cowboys fan.
So you got to see a few Super Bowls.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the most memorable one was obviously '95 when we beat the Steelers. My brother was talking smack the whole week, singing that stupid song. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. Pittsburgh's going to the Super. The whole week, I had to hear that stupid song. And then my mom, she's always very conservative. She's a Steeler fan too, but she's very conservative, and she's telling him the whole week, like, dude, you might want to stop talking so much
Yeah,
smack
those
because
90s Cowboy teams were one of the best I've ever seen.
I mean, best offensive line for sure.
You know, Larry Allen. Did you read
I
Michael
love Larry
Strahan's
Allen.
book? There was a
No.
there was a disease in the NFL called Allenitis. And basically, if you were a defensive lineman and you were going up against the Cowboys, that hamstring isn't quite healed yet. I got to sit this one out.
I mean, there's a video of him in like one of the Pro Bowls where they were doing like a weightlifting competition, And he had to have had 325, I think, on the bar, and he put it up like 45 times.
Yeah, I've heard he put up some
Yeah.
insane
I
numbers.
saw him bench over 600 one point. It was on one rep, but still, it's pretty crazy
Yeah, I
to
heard he
think
did
about
well
that.
over 600.
Yeah, the bar was like bending on both sides.
Guys of that size who know how to move and use their leverage too. It's it's unreal.
He was fast too. Yeah, I think he ran like a 4.840 coming out of college.
That's
Insane.
not right.
Yeah. A lot of fun to watch. I miss those days because this is
I'll
just
bet you do.
a joke. This is a joke anymore. But anyways, back to business. So you went into family law. How long were you in family law before you're like, this ain't for me?
Maybe 3.5 years, something like that. Actually, my law partner now, the way we met was we were doing a deed for a divorce, and I had asked him for it, or he was preparing it or something, and I happened to see they had a job posting up on there. I reached out. I forget how many people he said interviewed for that, sent resumes for that. It was insane back then. Back then, law schools really went crazy with taking too many students. There were so many, I think someone even, there was a lawsuit against that US News and World Report because they advertise, you know, percent employed at graduation. You work at McDonald's, you're employed. So when they say after 6 months or 9 months, whatever it was, they have 97% employment, it doesn't mean 97% of them are working in law. Even where I live, we have a bunch of JDs on our hill, and several of them don't actually practice law. One's a financial advisor, one works for a construction company. So there were a lot of people looking back then, for sure.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would have thought it would be a pretty high placement rate.
Well, law schools are a cash cow. If you think about a medical school and all the equipment and everything they have to have there, what do you have to run a law school? Building,
Teachers
professors,
and professors.
some sort of administration. And that's that's pretty much it. So they charged all that tuition, and some of them, a bunch of law schools opened. I don't know the years, but I think some of them have closed down. I just read recently since then. So I think it's come back to more normal numbers. But yeah, it was a high competition back then for sure.
Mm. How hard was the bar to pass?
You know, it's almost like what I talked about earlier between engineering school and law school. It's the bar, it's not that the material is that hard. There's just a lot of it. I forget how many subjects, if you include the state stuff, were covered under the bar. But I mean, our school had a first time passage rate. University of Pittsburgh was, I think Penn was first in the state when I went to school, like 80, mid 80s, and we were 81 to 83%. So 4 out of 5 of us were passing the bar in the first time. Some of the other schools went down to, I think, 64% at the time for one of the law schools. So, um, I if you put the work in and do enough practice tests, you're going to be fine. But I took the patent bar. Now that was, I thought that was hard. They used to give it twice a year. I don't know how long ago that was before I took it. And now these are engineer science undergrads who went to law school. So it was a 28% passage rate one time.
Wow.
Long, long, long time ago. I took the patent bar a long time ago. That test was hard. I thought much harder than the bar as far as understanding the material. I mean, that test is, the bar is closed book, right? The patent bar is open book because it
And it's
doesn't
still
it
hard.
doesn't matter. The MPEP is this thick. You're never gonna find an answer. Maybe if you answer all the questions but one, maybe you could flip through, but still, good luck. They don't care.
I
You bring
wonder
whatever
if
you want.
nowadays the books are electronic because you can do Control F and find what you're looking
Yeah,
for.
I don't think you could take a laptop in there or something. But yeah, I don't think the bar is all that hard if you put in the time. I mean, you're not going to be able to just graduate and goof off all summer and probably pass it. It just,
You have to study for it.
yeah, because a law school, you know, I think law school could be a year. 'Cause you learn all the basic stuff in the first year. And then second and third year, some schools like Duquesne are really focused on getting their bar passage rate up. That U.S. News and World Report thing I talked about has all the rankings of the law school. When I went to Pitt, we were ranked a first tier law school, and they were obsessed about being a first tier law school. They aren't anymore, supposedly. But I think Duquesne was smart, and they said because part of the rankings in there are, it's been a while, but like the perception of the school, which is sort of self-fulfilling based on how you do on this ranking. And Duquesne probably looked at that and said, one thing we can control is our bar passage rate. That's something we have control over. So they really, because we have some Duquesne grads that work at our firm, and they really focused on second and third year. You've got to do all these things to get our bar passage rate up. That was smart. And
What's the best school to go to for law? Is it Harvard?
I think Harvard, Yale, and Stanford are probably always in the top three, and probably
Yeah.
always will be, just from a prestige thing.
Did you think about going to there or?
No, I lived in Delaware, and because I lived in Pennsylvania so long, went to Penn State. I came back and worked for a year at Allegheny Energy, Allegheny Power, to make sure I got in-state tuition, because at a state school, that's a big difference. So I only applied to there in Duquesne, and I wanted to go to University of Pittsburgh. That's where I got in.
Hmm.
I still root for Penn State though. I used to root for Pitt too, but so many Pitt people just trash Penn State that I just was like, you know what? I don't care about Pitt.
Hmm. I had a hunch about you early on when I met you, and I found out that you were an engineer and then went back to school to become an attorney because that sounds absolutely horrible to me, especially because I just hate school in general and never really, I didn't do well. I'm a hands-on learner. I don't do well with a book. My theory with you was there was like a Van Wilder complex to where like you miss school, so you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna go back for 3 years and I'm gonna party it up and have a good time. Because I feel like you partied probably quite a bit in school. Am I wrong there?
No, I did. It wasn't so much that as more um, the patent attorney thing. I mean, I knew someone who had done it. One of my good friends in Delaware was doing it, and I'd always been interested in law and politics and stuff, and it kind of seemed like a good fit that I can use my undergrad and then do something that's going to pay more money and be maybe a little better career path. The other thing I was considering was the MBA. I was going to try and be a software executive because I knew the technical stuff after being a software engineer. But yeah, it's would I do it again? I don't know. I think I would. I mean, I'm really happy where I am now. I'm co-owner of the firm, managing partner, and it's we're growing. Like I said, we just hired two more. Both of our existing law clerks accepted full time, so they'll be there in I guess the end of July, early August. And we're growing and things are good. You know, as I'm getting old, as you point out, with my gray hair all the time.
I feel like when you get that camaraderie, like, and you like the people you work with, you don't need to, be some buku billionaire. As long as you're having fun, you're making money, you're living comfortably. And I feel like you have a little bit of that. It seems like you and Phil have a really good rapport and you like some of the people that are working for you. That's one of my big things. Like I learned that early on because we had an agent that was working for us that was just very, very difficult. I think they hit the bottle a little bit at night, and then they would just call me at like 8 o'clock at night and just start bitching and moaning about stuff. And me, I'm just trying to make everybody happy all the time. That's always my thought with it. But when that person left, it was like a breath of fresh air. It was like, oh my God, like a huge weight just got lifted off of my shoulders. And it's like, I don't like the most I make off of one agent's probably 20, 30 grand. Like it's not worth stress and agony for
Right.
20 or 30 grand. So like we've really focused on just building around people that want to be here, that we like, that we get along with. And if somebody doesn't fit that, we get rid of them pretty quick. We weed them out.
One of the things we do that's worked really well is when you're at a smaller firm or company, you're you can't miss on a hire, right? We have 8 people at our firm. We have a paralegal as well, and we can't miss. We can't hire an attorney directly without knowing them, because you can sit down with someone for an hour and interview them, and no one at an interview is fully themselves. It's almost like a first date, right? I mean, you don't know the person yet.
Right.
So one of the things we've done is we hire law clerks from Peter Duquesne, and they usually start at the beginning of the summer and they work for us all summer. And if it's going well, we offer them to work during school. So we hired two summer before last, and they were doing a good job. So we invited them to stay through their second year of law school. And then they were here again this summer, full time, going into their third year of law school. And we've grown enough that we were able to offer them both full time. So they'll graduate in April, May, take the bar in July, and then they'll start full time. We already know them. Not only that, not only do we know they're going to be good and they fit our culture.
And they have the work ethic and the
Yeah,
attitude.
all of that,
Yeah.
but they're going to hit the ground running. They've been working on the stuff that we do for it'll be 2 years by the time they start. Same thing with our Andrew, one of our current associates. He's did the same thing. He worked for us for years. And then once it was time to start, he hit the ground running. Didn't have to teach them much of anything. They knew how to do billing. They knew how to do the areas of law that we do, and they're ready to go on day one. Because if we were to try and hire an outside attorney, especially someone out of school, maybe hasn't had a job at a firm before, just based on some of the clerks we've had before, I kind of sat down one day and I was trying to think of all the clerks we had and what percentage of them were people I would have hired. And it was a third to 40%
Mm,
would have
that
actually
low.
hired. Yeah.
Well, that's the difference. Like in my business versus yours, I'm dealing with independent contractors where they gotta make their own money, and then we share in that income. Obviously, we help them make money, but your business, you got to pay them salary, benefits, payroll taxes, all kinds of craziness for every single person that you hire, right? There's no 1099s in the attorney business, right?
Whatever their salary is, you figure about add 20% to that number. It's what it's going to cost us to employ them between retirement match and healthcare and 7.62, you know, uh, yeah, you have to add about 20% to that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Did you watch a lot of TV and your show interests are very similar to mine? Did you watch Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Okay, did you watch the spinoff Better Call Saul?
I started to because of you and
Gonna get into it?
life. No, it was
Okay.
good. It's just one of those life happened and I kind of
It's a
forgot
little
what it was.
slower than Breaking Bad. Like it's a little more methodical.
That Breaking Bad was one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Fantastic. I mean, it's right there with Sopranos, in my opinion.
It's up there.
How realistic was Better Call Saul from like what you saw of it?
I haven't seen someone asked me that about Suits. Suits is almost a better because I didn't watch enough Better Call Saul. He pulled some stuff in the courtroom that would have gotten him very much yelled at, and in the show he got yelled at too. But I mean, he's a shady
Yeah,
attorney.
he's Edgar Snyder, right? Like
Well, I'm not gonna say it.
he's that
Trying to
type
get a
of
defamation suit against me here.
he's that type of attorney. He's
Well, I
like,
mean,
yeah,
PI attorneys are PI
yeah,
attorneys. I mean, they're necessary, but he was, one of the, you can't help your clients commit crimes and commit frauds, which is what I mean, even on Breaking Bad, he was
yeah. He
helping
was
them
doing that.
launder
Yeah.
money and things like that. So no, I don't think that's maybe there's some attorney. I mean, hey, attorneys get disbarred. We get a thing every month in the legal law journal or whatever it is. And I see people getting disbarred. It usually has something to do with client funds more than anything.
Yeah, like escrow
But
account
I've even
stuff.
seen some attorneys that told their clients someone called me years ago, and we do a lot of landlord tenant, as you know, and said, my attorney told me they had the hearing, they did all this, which I was kind of odd to me that the person didn't go to the hearing because I can't go to court myself. I have to have a witness. I can't be an attorney and a witness, right? I thought, okay, maybe there's a property management company, which that would explain it. There wasn't. He told me they had a hearing and all this stuff. So I said, why don't you just give me your docket number and I'll pull it up. I pulled it up in the county. There was no hearing. There was nothing. There was an initial complaint filed a long time ago. And he said he was like 7 grand into this.
Whoa.
Attorney. Yeah. I don't know the attorney's name. I don't remember it and wouldn't say it anyway. But Yeah, so Suits was,
I haven't watched Suits yet. It's on my list to
oh,
watch.
it's good.
My new thing is I want the show that I start to be done, like completely done, make sure they're not going to make any more of it, and then
There's a
I'll
new
watch it.
season of Suits coming out,
Yeah, that's why I'm like,
especially.
I'm
It'll
waiting.
take you a while though, because there's 8 seasons and there's like 60 episodes per season. It'll take Suits is good. Well, I guess if you haven't watched it, but trying to, you know what was the best representation of actual court? I think Suits wasn't bad for the stuff in court. The stuff they did outside of court with pulling all these strings was a little unrealistic. A Few Good Men.
Okay.
When they're questioning witnesses and the judge who's overseeing it, and there's a part where they were going to call a whole bunch of witnesses to say the prosecution to say they I don't remember they had seen or not seen something, and Tom Cruise's character stops and says, we will stipulate that everyone who's going to call is going to say this if they will stipulate that none of them were in this room at this time. I mean, that's something you would see in a courtroom stipulation like that. The judge controlling things, he's saying, "Watch it, counselor," and when he's getting a little off. I thought that the part about when he gets Jack Nicholson to freak out and you can't handle the truth. I guess that could happen. Getting someone, I've gotten some witnesses pretty mad before, but
I could see you watching something that has to do with like law and just picking it apart and just, but I can't watch this. It's not realistic at all, or something along those lines. Like, you just seem like that type of person where you're that invested.
sometimes I've seen stuff go on that's just even with Suits. Sometimes I'm just like that would never happen. But I don't care too much. I know it's fiction.
Yeah, just I mean, even the reality TV shows in real estate are super fiction. Like, you think you're gonna just show somebody three houses, they're gonna buy $1.5 million house. It doesn't work like that. Maybe in some markets, but not after three houses. They're gonna look at 55, 60 houses more than likely, and then they're gonna buy that. The other thing is, if you ever pay attention to like what their jobs are, have you ever watched like House Hunters?
Yeah,
The husband will be like, yeah, I manage a Walmart, and the wife's like, yeah, I make crafts at home and sell them on Etsy. Oh, we're looking for a $1.4 million house, and you're
I
just like,
figure
what?
they inherited some money.
It might be the
Like probably
case.
one of their parents passed away and gave them a couple mil or
But
something.
even still, they're setting themselves up for failure because once you run out of your parents' money, you still got to pay the taxes and the insurance and all that on that expensive of a house. I don't know. It's always been interesting to me where I just people I feel like that people watch that and then they get their real estate license because the barrier of entry is so easy to get your real estate license. And then they realize like, oh shit, I gotta make cold calls and I gotta send mailers and I gotta have this social media presence, and they don't realize how hard it actually is.
That's I've often thought that about the real estate license. I heard something earlier this year. They had numbers published for how many homes were actively being listed in the state, and then how many active agent licenses there were, and it
Yeah.
was like one. It almost was like an even number, like one per agent. So is that really how it is? Like 10% of the agents do 90% of the business.
Yeah, it's probably higher than that. It's probably like 95% of the agents don't do much business at all. So it's like 5% do most of it. But like right now we have the most inventory we've had since 2018, and there's 6,000 active listings on the West Penn Multi List, and there's like 9,500 agents in the West Penn Multi List.
Wow,
Yeah.
less than 1 to 1.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And now that's not houses sold and all that if you added those up. And I'm sure there's some markets where there's probably not as many agents, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I think that I thought there was gonna be a lot more fall off after the last renewal, but we only had maybe like 750 agents fall off at the renewal
You
period.
have to
So
renew every year.
every 2 years, which you should have your real estate license. All you gotta do is just pass the test. The attorneys don't even have to take the classes or whatever. They just pass the test and they have a license.
Oh, really?
You didn't know that?
I don't even know what I would do with it at this point.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't hurt to have it, right?
I
Just to
guess I
just
don't
to
think anyone's
say,
ever asked me to.
you ever want to sell your house or whatever, you don't have to pay me a commission. I don't know why I'm talking myself out of getting
Yeah,
a commission right now.
we sold my wife's house. We used
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. Have you seen what's the kids movie where they have different, like there's Joy, and it just came out with a new one. I'm
Ask,
drawing a blank on it right now.
ask the
You don't
wrong
watch
person.
kids movies with your
I
daughter?
do, but she's like me. Like when I was a kid, I would like a movie and I'd watch it 300 times. Like Three Amigos was popular when I was a kid, and I'd
Yeah.
watch, instead of watching something new, I would even go to the store back when they had VCR tapes you could rent. And if I was going to choose a movie, I would choose something I already saw and watch it again. So
What movie is she into?
I've seen both Lion Kings 300 times. She's not really doing a lot of movies now. Like we have a lot of kids in our neighborhood, so when she comes home from school,
She's out playing.
she's wanting to go outside and play,
That's
which is
awesome.
good.
Yeah. My daughter was big into Frozen at that age.
Oh yeah, I've seen
She
them.
watched Frozen like 5 million times. But anyways, there's a movie. I forget the name of it. They have two of them now, but there's like different. They're inside the kid's head, and they have different personalities. And you're gonna hate me for saying this, but you come off as anxiety all day long. Like you're always pacing in your office, you're on the phone, and you're it's quite entertaining. So what is the one time that you were the most nervous in your law career?
Oh boy. I'm not actually that anxious. I pace when I'm on the phone.
Yeah.
I did that, when I was 11 years old and calling the first girl I liked. I just, if I'm on the phone, I just start walking. My neighbors make fun of me because when it's warm out, deck, backyard, and even when it's not warm out, I'll go downstairs in our first floor sometimes and just walk circles. I cannot sit and be on the phone. The most anxious, it probably had something to do with the big trial. That's the most anxiety inducing event because what's the definition of anxiety is unknown of the future. You don't, you've got someone on the other side who's a highly paid professional whose job is to poke holes in every single thing you do and vice versa. So you're always afraid that, especially when you're a younger attorney. I mean, I used to go to court and think the judge is going to say a phrase I don't know. He's going to use some Latin law phrase that I've never heard of before or something like
What
that.
what do you do in that scenario?
It never happened, so I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know.
Can you like Google it on the spot and just figure out what it is?
Probably not. Honestly, I probably would just be honest with the judge and just say I don't know what that means. They're pretty forgiving to newer attorneys who are making sincere efforts. They're not gonna sit there. You watch a lot of things with judges on TV, on shows and things, but a lot of them were, most of them are former attorneys, not all of them. So I would say trials, especially multi-day trials, because there's so much prep work and so much thinking. Like you are on edge the whole time because whether you're playing for defendant, you are so hyper focused the whole time because you can win or lose a case on one piece of evidence. And if they go to submit something, if you want to object, you better do it in a couple seconds or they're moving on. And then you better be prepared to have an argument back and forth about why it's admissible or inadmissible. And hearsay is one of those things where, like, when you do here's evidence in law school, day one of hearsay is this is what hearsay is. And then the next 10 weeks are the exceptions to it. So that's probably it. Just a generality is going to court. I don't go to court a whole lot anymore. Andrew, my associate, has been phenomenal in court, and we've got those two attorneys coming on. So I don't. That's the one thing when I, you know, became owner and now managing partner that I was happy to kind of pass off to the to the younger guys. I mean, I help them with it and I oversee it and everything, but they'll be handling most of the court now. So that's one benefit of reaching a certain point in your career. That the most anxiety inducing thing that I used to do, I now don't do so much anymore.
I thought for a second you were gonna say when you found out the lady was asking for like 1.2 million or whatever in that
Oh,
case, because you seemed so nervous when you called me on the phone. I was just like, well,
750, that was the
was
number.
was it
Yeah,
750? I thought it was higher, and then it came down to 750 like the day of the mediation or
it
whatever.
might have been at
Yeah, it
one
was like
point.
1.2, and then it came down to 750. Good news, gentlemen. She came down to 750 to start the day. And I was like, okay, wake me up when it's over. Because I was coming back from Vegas on like 2 hours of sleep. I don't know if you remember that. That was like one of the
Yeah, I
worst
do.
days of my life.
Don't talk about the actual ending because that's
Okay,
never
well, I won't. Yeah, but
settlement.
I was just like, hey, wake me up when when it's my turn to talk to the arbitrator, mediator, whatever he was. And yeah, it was just miserable.
Well, he did a great job.
He did a great job.
He is the best. I always want to use him.
I thought, dude, up until within like 10 minutes, I thought it was never gonna work out.
Yeah. Anybody watching this wants a good meat eater, Gary Cruz, a former judge in Westmoreland County. He's incredible. Nice guy too. Guy you'd like to hang out with too. Really like him.
What's your favorite business book?
Business book.
Yeah.
Jeez.
You're running a business now. You're not just an attorney.
Yeah. I don't the one thing I noticed as I got more into law is I read a lot less because I'm reading all the time. So whether for pleasure or side books, I rarely read much anymore because you sit there and someone asks you to review a 70-page commercial lease. You don't want to do much more reading the rest of the day. So I've read them. I've read business books, but I couldn't like pick one off the top of my head right now.
You could just, name drop my book, but you haven't bought that yet. So,
Oh, that's right. You're a published author now.
yeah, sad to say. Somehow that happened.
What's the name of your book?
Short-term memory loss.
Oh,
Yeah.
why'd you go with that title?
Well, I was trying to think of the reason to name it's a sales book and it, teaches you about the skills of sales, but not only just as how to sell, but also that sales is a part of everyday life, right? Like if you want to negotiate a better deal on your Cadillac, that's a part of sales. If you want to get a promotion at work, that's a part of sales. If you want to get laid by your wife at home, that's a part of sales, right? Like it all builds into it. So it kind of teaches you that even if you're not in a sales industry, you can use sales to make your life better. That's kind of the theory of it. But back when I was at T-Mobile, and I was teaching my agents, my big thing was you got to have short-term memory loss because at T-Mobile, you were servicing the customers, but also selling customers. And you would have a customer come in and just irate, screaming at you, calling you every name in the book and treating you like absolute dog shit. And you had to somehow keep your composure, help them through that problem, get them happy, send them on their way, and then immediately turn into a salesperson on the next deal. And if you let
Right.
that upset customer ruin your day, your sales goals for that day are just going to be shit. So you gotta have that short-term memory loss. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you're looking at it, but then as soon as you read it, and I explain in like I think the first chapter, like as soon as you realize like, oh, you got a short-term memory loss because you can't, especially if you're cold calling or door knocking or anything crazy like that, you're gonna get so many people being absolutely rude to you. And that's like one of my favorite things if you're making a cold call is instead of like if I were to call you and I didn't know you, if I call you and I say, "Hey, Mr. Beam, what are you thinking?" right away. That's the first. What's your first thought that's going through your head?
I get a cold call and they say to me, "What are you thinking?"
No, hey, Mr. Beam. That's their first line out of their words. What are you thinking?
That's way too formal. I don't know this
Yeah,
person.
this is
It's
a
a
sales
sales
call,
call.
right?
Yeah.
Sales call. So if I call you and go, hey, Matt, do you think I automatically have, oh, I probably know this person. I just don't have their number in my
Right.
phone, right? So it just takes them off edge right away. It's just
Right.
those little nuances that helps you. But yeah, so you don't have a favorite business book that comes to mind?
Not that I can
What
remember. It's
about
been
like
a
law
while.
book? Anything?
Law book.
Yeah. Podcasts? What is your favorite thing that you learned from?
I don't I don't really reference a lot of outside materials. I mean, I've been working since I was 12 or going to school since I was 12 years old. So I've worked at other firms and experienced things yet there. And when I became owner of this firm, I've been in investing in economics for a long time. Um, I nerdiest thing you'll hear today probably, but if I'm driving to work, if I'm not on the phone with someone, I'm listening to uh, YouTube channels on economics and investing all the time, whether it's David Lynn or someone else who has economists on. So there's a lot of business talk on there. So it's more digital for me now than it is reading because again, I would rather listen to something, have something said to me at this point
I mean,
than read more.
there are audiobooks out there and you can do stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely know you're into like stock markets and stuff like that.
YouTube is such a resource. I mean, you can learn like I'm like really into cars and I've been learning a lot of car mechanics and rebuilds and engine stuff. I just watch these guys do it online. Now, of course, that doesn't mean I can go do it, but just you can learn so much. And just listening to all these guys that talk about, stock market and the economy and government and everything. Now, they don't all agree, but I've watched so much I've watched so much stuff from like Milton Friedman, for example, that I feel like I may as well have been in his class in the 70s
Hmm.
because I've watched every one of his lectures and interviews, and he had a TV show for a while. So that's the stuff I watch where I tend to soak in business and economics knowledge as opposed to reading books. Because again, I sitting down to read, given what I do for a living, not my first pick.
You're pushing 50 as we talked about. How much longer do I have you as my attorney before your punk ass retires?
I'm not looking to get anytime soon. Once you become a shareholder at the firm, and if you're like, managing the partner, because my law partner's he'll be 67 in January. Um, that's pretty much there's nowhere to go really from there. So I'm just kind of enjoying doing that. I'm not going to bill it all the way to that and then just be like, all right, good. I mean, I'm hitting peak earning years too. So um, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, obviously, someday down the road, there will come a point where, my associate now, Andrew, who's, become a very good friend of mine, he's phenomenal. He's going to own the place with me one day. There's no doubt. So just like Phil does with me now, where I'm more running the firm and he's more focused on settlement or just whatever he wants to do. Probably will have that with Andrew at some point where I'll be able to pull back a bit. And
You'll be able to slack off and make Andrew do all the work.
I want to get into some car stuff. That's what I'm.
Car stuff. Like what, you want to collect cars or you want to sell
No, I
cars?
don't know what it's going to be. We're putting a third garage in our house in the spring, and um, I'm really, I've watched, last night I watched a guy named Matt Armstrong in the UK. He'll buy wrecked cars and rebuild them. Now he's buying very expensive Lamborghinis and stuff like that, but rebuild them. I've been enjoying those so much and watching them that I don't know what it's going to be exactly yet. I don't know if I'm going to start flipping cars and all that because people can make mistakes on that, but something along those lines
Hmm.
when I have more time. Not sure yet.
Well, you can't retire before I do, so I'm just gonna let you know that
I
now.
can't see you ever retiring
I
unless you
do.
actually like went off to an island somewhere. You'd sit on the beach for a week and then you'd be getting your Guam real estate license, become an agent
I,
in Guam, and then next thing you know, you'd have 15 companies in Guam. How many companies do you have now? 640?
I mean, if you include all the little LLCs and
Yeah,
stuff, I mean, it's probably like close to 20. I don't know,
that would
something
have been
like
my
that.
guess,
But
20.
I mean, at some point, I'm absolutely gonna be done with real estate. Like I it just it's gonna it wears on you. I mean, you own rentals, you get just hammered all day long. Like, your property manager's calling you, though, this tenant's not paying their rent, this happened, this repair needs done, all kinds of just craziness. And so at some point, when my rentals are paid off, that's an easy part. I'm just going to simply go to my property manager and say, if whatever is going on is less than $10,000, don't call me.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's how it becomes passive and more mailbox money. And that, but until they're paid off, I have to be way more active in the management side of things. But you also have to have a lot of trust in that property manager who you're giving basically a $10,000 check to at any given time, especially when they're almost every property management manager in town, I assume, makes some kind of profit on repairs and stuff like that. So you got to be real cautious with that. But just even the real estate brokerage, everything, at some point, it's just like, it's enough's enough. I wanted something different at some point, which is, why maybe I might get into, you know, who knows, public speaking someday. I've done a little bit of that. I kind of enjoy that. I like training and developing people. Maybe I'll do some coaching. But God, after BNI, like coaching just seems like something that it's so cliche and I got so annoyed of hearing the sales pitch from the coaches and the BNI groups over the years where you're just like, I don't want to be that loser at some point in my life. They're not losers, but I'm just like, they're just sitting there like, like the one that we know. I
There's a
mean,
coach and then there's a cheerleader.
yeah, like he was an executive for a grocery store chain, and it's like, okay, well, and don't get me wrong, he helped me. I'd actually used his services and he helped me a lot, but at the same point, there was always that thought in the back of my head is like, well, you never really owned a business and you helped somebody run their business. I don't know, it's just weird. I don't want somebody to question that. So I go through a lot of different things. Maybe I'll just try and be like a CEO for a startup company or something. I don't know. Who knows? Or maybe I'll just be stuck in real estate the rest of my life and be miserable at some point. But
You brought up BNI, and
we met at BNI.
I think we met before. Wait, it was the one
Hmm.
Settlers Ridge. So
Yeah.
you started going for
I
Alex.
started going
Okay,
for
that's how we
Alex.
met.
Yeah.
But then we had the one in this building.
Yeah.
And for as annoying as I found BNI to be at the time, in hindsight, I have to say, I'm actually pretty impressed with it. I'll
Oh,
tell
yeah. It's
because, well, a couple things. I look back at one point, this is a while ago because I wouldn't even try and count this now, but how many clients I had that came from that tree. I'd get a client and then they'd send me someone and then it would kind of split and split. And how much business I actually did bring in from BNI. And I think most people get worked up with the rules. You can only miss 3 per 6 months and all that. But I tell you what, after that chapter here that dissolved, I joined a networking group in the South Hills.
we both did. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you were there too.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what was the thing? We're not going to be BNI. We're not going to be
We're not going to
sticklers.
follow the
And what
rules.
happened?
They sucked. Yeah. No, you'd
No
have like
one.
three people show up to a
Yeah,
meeting. Yeah. It was not
it was
good at all.
terrible. So you start to understand why their rules are what they are. The only thing that bugged me was that annual training, because if you weren't moving into one of the president, vice president things to go sit through that, you're losing a full day a year to hear stuff you just heard a year ago. That probably bugged me the most.
See, what bugged me the most is like the what once or twice a year when you'd have the big meeting where you try and invite a bunch of people to, I forget what they called it. And then they'd
Yeah.
like require you to do so many phone calls and so many letters and so many, and it's just like, I
Were
don't
you there for that part, for the forming chapter, or did you come in
know. I
after that?
came in after that.
So that was a pain. When I joined that one in Settlers Ridge, it was a forming chapter, and it was all invite, invite, invite. If you have a referral, great. And we had to bring in 40 letters, printed out, signed, stamped to prove that we were sending out 40 letters. That was not fun. So someone approached me, an agent, you probably know, about joining a group that was, it wasn't BNI, it was a different group. And I said I would think about it, but I wouldn't join a forming chapter again. That was, that was a one and done.
I think BNI for a somebody newer in their business is so vital. Like you're getting, and honestly, some of my best friends in business in the business world, like you, and I still talk to Todd Novak after all these years. And I mean, I met a lot of great people from BNI. It's a great resource, but just the overall referrals that you need for your business early on, it's so important. And the problem is, it's like for the real estate business, 'cause I tell all my agents like do anything you can to get into a BNI group, but you just can't. Like you basically have to form your own chapter to get into a BNI group as an agent. Because
Yeah.
once one of those spots opens up, I mean, when they do open up, it's in a very small chapter, and you still got to know somebody to get in there. It's kind of like a cult.
Those certain career paths are very hard. I think financial advisor is probably difficult. Real estate agents difficult.
Loan officer, title
Yeah.
company. Yeah.
Yeah, law was not bad except when an unnamed person was always forcing me to focus. I was the only lawyer in there, and
Category
yeah,
cowboy.
I was like, yeah, he called me a category cowboy.
Yeah, I got that from the VP of mine because I joined one when I started the brokerage. I joined it as a commercial agent. My theory was like, okay, I'll be able to build a relationship with an agent, maybe recruit the residential agent, know when a residential spot opens up, so I can get my agents into it. And then I was like, maybe I'll get a little commercial business too, and whatever. But then like when I was, you have to pitch every single week. So like I would throw in there like, hey, if you see somebody that has a for sale by owner sign in their yard, that'd be a good referral for me. Or if cause I would start pitching my investment side of my stuff, right? If you know anybody who wants to make 10% back on their money and, I'd take a loan from them, anything like that, that I threw out. And he pulled me aside. He's like, there's an investment category too. You sure you don't want to switch to that? And I'm like, no, I'm good. And he's like, well, you're being a category cowboy right now. And I'm like, oh, really? Is there any other investors in here?
Right.
Is there any?
Right. Why do they care if there's no one else in there?
Now, if one comes in, yeah, I have to respect that person and not go over their category,
Right.
right?
They wanted me to be either real estate or business
Business and not
law. I'm
both.
like,
Yeah.
there's not even another lawyer in here. What do you care? And then the stuff with the settlement was even worse because, my law partner has a settlement company and I do have a financial interest in bringing closings into that settlement company. So I would talk about that too, and he would go even more ballistic. I'm like, but no one's here for that. Like,
Yeah,
who
nobody's here for that.
cares?
Like my
The whole
like
point of this is to get referrals and for us all make more money. So if someone comes in as a settlement company, then fine, I'll back off. But until then, well, that should be reserved for your one-on-ones. So you want me to take, if there's 25 people here, to take 24, what's the time it takes to meet with someone? You meet with them for an hour plus travel. So you want me to spend 48 hours doing what I could do in 1 minute when everyone's here?
right. I'm trying to think. I was probably 25 when I joined the BNI group. That was like 12 years ago. We've known each other for a long time.
Yeah, I think I started with Phil in 2010. I probably was in BNI in 2011. I met Alex first.
Yeah, it would have been 2013, 2014 when I joined BNI.
That's back when you were an agent happy to get a $30,000 closing.
Oh my God. I would have taken anything at that point. And I was taking
You
anything,
did.
including let's see, the two worst Matt Beam referrals I've ever had was
Oh gosh, I know his name already.
well, we're not gonna say names, but
No,
we
no, I
had
know who it
I
is.
had the client in Penn Hills where I did a bunch of work to his house with my contractor just to get it through the FHA repairs and stuff. And he was supposed to pay me 3 grand at closing and then told me to fuck off right before closing.
And that same client, I had $1,000 retainer, went through it. He was about to get screwed out of his ex's estate. I got him 30 grand, I think, but the retainer went because it was a lot of back and forth and it was a good bit of work to do that. And don't worry, I'm a man of my word. My word is my
Uh-huh, I
bond and
heard
all
that a
this
whole bunch of
stuff.
times.
And
Yeah.
then I had maybe another $1,000 bill after getting him 30. And yeah, he
There's not
walked.
many people in this world that are worth an assault charge, but if I ever saw him again. And then there was the you remember the SWAT one? It was the only time in my life I've ever been like up close in person with SWAT. Yeah, so you referred me this young, I think they were a couple, and I think they had just inherited a couple houses in East Liberty from their father or something like that. And so I went out to meet with them and tour these, and they were crappy properties. They were really
I
rough.
think I know what you're talking
And we
about.
went into the last one, which happened to be the nicest property. I'm like, oh, this one actually might be decent, you know? And we were in it, and literally the SWAT truck pulled up as we were in it. I literally I went like I'm just a real estate agent, you know, and they said stand up against the wall. I was like, okay, I just stood up against the wall, and they went in. They arrested the guy. I think they left the woman alone, but they arrested the guy and took him out, and then they just left. I don't know if he even owned that house. I'm not sure why he got arrested and then nothing, and I never heard from him ever again.
That
So
was an odd estate. I ended up withdrawing my appearance because not only was I doing a lot of work and not getting paid, but there's somebody contacted me and some lady claimed she was some long lost child of the estate too. And yeah, that was the craziest one I'd ever worked on.
did I ever give you a bad referral?
Squatters ended up going in them and everything. Then they'd get them out and they'd go right back in. And yeah, that was frustrating. Have you ever given me a bad referral?
I had
Probably.
to. I
I'm
had to have
sure.
given you a bad referral at some point. Somebody who just wasted your time and didn't pay you or something. Has to happen on a pretty regular basis for an
Well, yeah, I
attorney.
mean, you get calls sometimes, and sometimes people are upfront and they're, you know, I don't know who they are, but they know someone I know. They get referred and they said, sometimes they even have an attorney. That happened to me recently. Someone had an attorney and they wanted, second opinion, which I'm not real big on trashing other professionals' work, even if I don't agree with what they're doing. Um, or people who say, I know this person who knows you, I just wanted to ask some questions about this. So they're not actually looking for legal representation. They just want to pick my brain for 20 minutes. And
What do you
I
do in that scenario?
I will usually call them because again, it's networking. It's, they might call me 2 years from now and need something. That has happened. I mean, I spoke at one of Deacon's meetups back in 18, right after my daughter was born. I got a call earlier this year from someone who was at that in 2018.
Really?
Yeah.
That long ago they remembered you.
Yep. So,
I try and forget you after like a week of not seeing you.
yeah, appreciate that. So yeah, I try and do it, but I'm at a certain point, you'll have the people who call you and just want some information, like, I'm willing to pay you for this. And I automatically just appreciate that so much that I'll just talk to them
for
for free
free.
for a
Yeah.
while. But then you have the other people who just, I can tell they're going to abuse it. Back when I was 10, 12 years ago, like Phil would sometimes say, I've got a meeting at 2 o'clock with a new person. Can you go take it? I'd go down there, sit there for an hour. They'd ask me a million questions, need to leave, and I'd never see them again.
Hmm.
How do I do this? How do I do that? You eventually wise up to who's trying to get free legal advice out of you and who's actually sincere and has an issue. So I don't lose anywhere near the time that I used to.
Is there any recourse that like somebody wastes? Because I would assume almost all attorneys do an initial consultation for free.
Not all. When I was
Really?
in family law, the initial consults were charged
Hmm. So you could say
because,
like, pay me $150 or something.
yeah, because, well, back then, before, I mean, this is almost 20 years ago, but yeah, they were like $150 for a consult back then, because you do get a lot of some some cases you have are law specific and some are case specific. So if you have a dispute with someone and you have a signed contract and the dispute is whether this one thing is enforceable, there's no factual argument there. It's a legal argument. On the other hand, if you have an issue where someone damaged your property after leaving, the tenant damaged your property, it's really clear what the lease says, but what was the damage and were they responsible and all this stuff, that's purely factual. So when cases are more on the legal side versus the factual ones are the ones you got to be careful with because they involve a lot of work, a lot of evidence, a lot of this and that. The facts can go either way versus the law. So if someone just has a quick question trying to understand the law, that's one thing. But it's when people want to give me every detail of everything that happened and they're going to go do the case themselves. That's when it eats up a lot of your time. It's
Hmm.
like, look, I can't. Or they'll read me a line of a contract, say, what do you think? I'm like, I can't answer that question without reviewing it and seeing it. Then like, okay, I'll send it to you. Like, well, I'm not gonna sit down and review your old contract for 35 minutes without getting compensated for it. So you learn to balance it out.
Is there like, are they automatically like, if they compensate you, does that automatically create a attorney-client privilege in that scenario?
Even if there's a consultation. So for things of like conflict of interest, if someone, I mean, The
The
Sopranos,
Sopranos.
what did Tony do, right?
He went and met with all the divorce attorneys.
Conflict it out,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, if they come tell me it's protected, they're not a client until I send them an engagement letter and they sign it. Sometimes we want a retainer. Other times, if it's someone like if you referred me a good friend of yours, I'm not that worried about getting a retainer up front. But that's when they officially become a client. But yeah, it's still protected. I remember geez, this was almost 20 years ago. I was pretty fresh out of school. Some attorney, say what county it was, but told me a story about there was a long unsolved murder in their area, and she had a client, and he told her he did it, and she can't
She can't do
do
anything
anything.
about
Now, if
it.
he said, I'm going to go kill someone, or I'm going to go, I think it's commit a fraud, then there's reporting that has to be done. But yeah, he told her he's the one who did it.
But if you committed a crime and tell them afterwards, then you're off the hook.
Yeah, you have to, if your client says they're going to go hurt or kill someone, or they're going to go commit a fraud, I think those are the only two times you have to.
Duly noted. So if I'm ever going to commit a crime, just commit it first and then tell you
Yeah,
later.
tell me about
Okay,
it
got it.
afterward.
Oh man. All right. The one question I try and ask everybody I interview is, if you were to go back to 21-year-old Matt Beam and do it all over again, what would you change?
It's hard to say because things are so good right now. There have been days, maybe 10 years ago where law could be stressful and frustrating that um there was a point even around 2011 where I thought about going back into software. So I don't know. I mean, things are so good now, happily married, daughter's healthy, reached kind of the top of where I can go in my career. So right now I would say I would do it the same again. But to give you a fun answer, some things that I think I
Yeah.
would have done was I always thought my dream job would be. Now, this is probably not true because it's one of those things where I enjoy, but if I did it every day and had the stress of it, maybe I wouldn't. But um, being some form of a money manager, whether it's working at a hedge fund or something like that. You know, you mentioned this before, but I've been so big into economics and investing and stock market and everything that, you know, I was in ninth grade the first time I saved grass mowing money and went to a broker. And back then there was no E-Trade or, you know, anything like that. There were no online brokers. And, you know, you had to go find a store and the commission was huge. And so I've always wondered if because I've got a really good record of stock market investing.
If you would
But
have bought
then again,
Microsoft at 9 years old, what would it be worth?
you know what I went to buy with Unisys, and it wasn't Microsoft, but it would have been enormous.
Really? I've never
Yeah,
even heard of Unisys.
yeah. And then the only reason I didn't buy was, you know, I'd saved, again, this is $1989, but I'd saved maybe $600, which, you know, I think I forget how many years later it would have 10 times my money already, but the commissions were so big back then. It was like, you know, again, it's a store in my hometown of Ligonier. It's up on the main area called the Diamond. There was a brick and mortar store there, and the commission was going to be half of my money. I still would have made out even eating that commission, but I didn't do it because of that.
See, I think if I was that stockbroker and a 9 year old came, I would just waive my commission and be
And I
like,
think
sure, kid, I'll go ahead and do this for you.
my aunt and uncle's friend worked there, and I was like, no, you know, just
You're like, no, I'm not
tag
going
it
to give you
along with
50%
something.
of my money.
So I
Interesting.
probably went and bought video games instead of Unisys stock, you know.
I could see you kind of being like what's Christian Bale's character in the movie about the mortgage crisis. God, what I don't know.
The Big Short.
Big Short. I'm drawing all kinds of blanks today on movies and shows, but
That's a great movie.
it's a great movie. But like I could see you just being like so in tune with like the details and like digging down like 25 steps in
You know
to
what?
realize
You
that
know what I use? It's called Fast. It's a software. See, I used to try and mimic this, and if anyone wants to look at it, it's like $15 a month. It's fundamental analyzer software tool or something like that. So you can look at any timeline you want with a company. Every company, and it'll tell you what their, say you choose 12 years. It will tell you what PE it's traded at for the last 12 years. And you can also look at just say like a 15 PE. And if you go back and you look, it gets overvalued and then goes under and over and under constantly up and down and above this. And it also shows you what the projected future earnings are going to be. And sometimes there's a stock that is trading so far under its historical PE, but the earnings are projected to continue in a path that you know it's going to go, it's 10, 12 times gone above its typical PE at different times. You know, again, in the next year or two, it's going to go above that PE. I forget how many stocks I bought in the last 2 years that, and I know the market's up, but it's not, you know,
it could be
massively
up
up.
way higher. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm down on one, and it was a very specific situation with the company. That tool makes it so easy that if more people knew about it to do their own investing, it helps tremendously.
I've done decent on my trades over the years, but I always sell too early. That's my problem. Like yeah, I bought one of the ones I kick myself all the time for is I bought Nvidia at like 22 bucks a share back in the day. Yeah. And that's I mean, they've done so many stock splits and they're still I mean, I would be if I would have held on to that, I would probably have a couple 100 grand, I'm guessing, just laying around just through that. But
You
um
got to make a watch list. You have to have a watch list of companies that you have a good reason to buy, but you just don't like the price currently. And what I used to love to buy based on stupid headlines. So you have your company and you miss earnings by a penny, but the headline's still going to be Hoover Corporation misses
misses
earnings by a
earnings.
penny. And then you read the transcript of the conference call and you realize the only reason they missed by a penny was because a sale that was supposed to close on March 31st
It closed on April
is closing
1st.
on
Yeah.
April 1st. It's still the same company. The stock falls 10%. And if you thought it was valued appropriately or even undervalued at where it was, and now you just got a 10% haircut, it's going to bounce right back to there. That I don't trade as much as I used to. I used to trade off stuff like that. Now I don't have the time. I'm just wife, kids, law firm, got a few other businesses going on. So I don't trade as much. Trading was exciting. Now I mostly invest, and I only sell like if I buy something and it shoots up. I bought Lockheed Martin a while back, and then the Ukraine war broke out. Things shot up like 60% in 6 weeks. I will take my profits on that. But I like to buy good dividend growth stocks at really undervalued prices and just keep adding to it over time because as you get older, you want to build up that passive income stream.
The
So,
amount of work you put into analyzing stocks and everything is probably equivalent to the amount of work I put in analyzing my NFL betting.
you like bet? See, I'd like to bet
Uh,
college. I think NFL is so hard.
College is so wild. Like the
NFL's
lines are
tough.
like minus 45, like it's like they got to cover 45 points. If they
Ohio
take,
State, Penn State was free.
okay, but I'm just saying there are ones out there. Like every
Yeah.
week
Well,
there's
I'm not going to
crazy
bet.
lines.
I'm not going to take Alabama minus 45 against Southeast Louisiana. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's well, it's all gambling, but that's you can make educated guesses. Like, I
Yeah.
hate to say this, but I put money on Ohio State
Oh,
against Penn
I've bet
State.
against the Cowboys almost every week this year.
I did the money line bet
Yeah.
on them to win minus 162 because I would gladly give that money. When I thought of that, because there was a back when in '04 when the Red Sox finally beat the Yankees, some lady called in a radio show and she said, I would give everything I have for the Red Sox to win. And the guy in the radio said, why don't you just take all your money in the world and put it on the Yankees then? Because either you're going to double your net worth or you'll get what you just said you would do. It's like, that's so
It is smart. Yeah, because I have the similar theory. Like, okay, the Cowboys are playing the 49ers a couple weeks ago, and Shanahan just plays McCarthy like a fiddle every time that we play them. So my theory was I'm just going to put my whole bankroll on the 49ers, which again, it's all money that I'm expecting to lose anyways, or gambling, you play with what you expect to lose and you hopefully come out a winner. So I put my whole bankroll on the 49ers. And if I lose, then I'm happy because the Cowboys just beat the 49ers for the first time in like, what, 5 years or whatever, right?
right.
Like I would be happy either way. I'd probably be more happy to win the money because I already know my Cowboys aren't going to go anywhere or do anything. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my theory with those type of things. But I know more about the Dallas Cowboys than any other team. I know a lot about the NFL. So like almost every week I'm going to have some kind of a wager on a Cowboys game. I don't like betting against my team, but if I know it's free money, I'm going to take it. Also, just like when the Cowboys face the Giants, it's free money to bet on the Cowboys because Dak Prescott owns the New York Giants. It's the only team he's consistently good against. So it's just like one of those things. But yeah, I have an app that I use called the Action Network. And so like if I was gonna bet college football, because I don't watch it that much anymore, and I watch like the national championship and stuff
Mm.
like that. But if I was going to bet on a college football game, I'm gonna look at the advantages in the bet. So what the public will bet heavy on one side, and then the sharks will come in and just hammer the other side because they know that the value's on the other side now because the public put all their money on one side or the other. And you could tell where the money's at versus where the bets are at because the public, they're betting 10, 15, $20 a game. So if 95% of the bets are on Penn State, but 80% of the money's on Ohio State, then you know that the sharps are like, this is Ohio State's game, and then you just follow those lines. You'll probably hit 60% just doing that.
What do you know what happened with that one Steelers Cowboys Super Bowl? Not the 95 one, but when the Steelers won 4 out of 6 years. There was a
In the 70s? No, I don't know what
Yeah, there
happened.
was I mean, I wasn't around either. There was a line, I think it started at 4.5, and all the Dallas people jumped on Dallas plus 4.5. And then it moved the line, went down to 3.5, and all the Pittsburgh people jumped on minus 3.5 or whatever it was. And then the game finished at 4 points. So all the Dallas people won.
What?
All the pit like Vegas took a bath on it.
Oh
All these
man.
bookies just took a bath on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things like that that happen, and you got to wonder, like, is this stuff fixed? Like, because it does come off sometimes as being fixed.
It's
Like
crazy sometimes. There's an 8 point spread on a football game. Like 8 points, it's usually 7-3, 10, but of course it could be eight, and it comes out eight.
Yeah, over unders is what like I don't bet over unders very often, and the reason is because like it blows my mind how accurate
Yeah.
Las Vegas is on over unders. I mean, 47 and a half on a random game, and you're like, okay, and then it's either 46 or 48, like probably depending on where the money's at, because Vegas doesn't want to lose money, so they probably have officials in their pockets or whatever else.
Did you ever see that great moments in betting history? I don't know if it's on YouTube or what, but they'll show something like an NBA game and the spread's 9 and some teams up 8 in the last second just dribbling, but then the guy will just take a shot and hit it, and it's just everyone there is quiet and walks off the court. But it's a great moment because the spread was 9 and he
Yeah.
made that shot, and people in the background are like going nuts.
Yeah, I mean it happens on a regular basis though. And there was that referee in the NBA who got I watched that documentary. That's pretty wild. Like he could have made so much money, like just being a legit referee. They make a lot of money. They make like $1 million a year just travel around refereeing NBA games. Now they're working a lot, but
They referenced that in The Sopranos. That was
it's probably the same guy they're talking
what they
about.
were well, Junior was talking about Carmine Lubertazzi invented point shaving, Kentucky versus somebody like in the 50s or something like that.
Well, Matt, I appreciate you coming on my podcast.
Thanks for
It's a
having me.
long time coming, and if anybody needs an attorney, how do they get in touch with you?
You can go to our website, scalerilaw.com. That's SCOLIERI. Or you can just email me directly. It's mbeam@scalerilaw.com. 412-765-0546 is our main number. We do mostly, as you know, real estate and business law. We do some litigation too, but tax appeals is another big one. Probably my favorite thing to do because that knowledge of math at least comes in somewhat, especially on commercial tax appeals. Can get a little more complicated with those.
And you learned how to text back in your old age now? You've been
Yeah,
texting a little bit more?
don't text me. I will not give a. You know what? You know when it started because even Alex, I look back. Alex had texted me like 12 times without a response. I always tell him call or email because someone years ago had a magistrate hearing, and I believe them, and they believe me. They said they sent a text. I get a call. It's like 9:03. I'm in my office on like a Monday morning, and I get a call, and it's the client. He says, "Hey, where are you?" Which you don't want to hear from a client because that's not just like, "How's your day going?"
Yeah,
Which
that's I fucked up.
no one
Yeah.
ever calls me to tell. That's what I tell my wife all the time. No one ever calls me to say everything's great. If they're calling me, something's wrong. I'm like, at my office, where are you? It's like, I'm at court. You're supposed to be here. Like, what are you talking about? And I believe him, but he sent me a text, like never called to follow up, never emailed to follow up, just
Never
sent
got
a
a response
text.
from the
Yeah,
text. Yeah.
because I never got it. And I showed him my phone and we ended up meeting up. And ever since then, the other thing is too, I've got work email, I've got my cell phone, I've got a work number downtown, both with voicemails and everything. It just because this is my personal phone too, and I mostly get texts from friends and stuff like that. So I could be out, I could be here right now, right? And just before we sat down, if a client text messages me, the odds that I'm going to leave here and I might get a phone call and then I'm going to, go back to work and stuff. I can so easily forget that I had a text at 9:24 that I just don't trust it.
It's funny because we're not that far apart in age, but I'm just the complete opposite. Don't fucking call me. Text me. Please text me, email me. Like I get enough phone calls that like that's the last thing that I want is a phone call. Like I'll take a text all day long. The other thing is like when somebody texts you, a lot of times they're at least giving you a little bit of why they need you to call. Like, hey, I got a question about something or whatever, and you can like mentally prepare for when if you just answer that call, you're not ready yet. And similar to you, I'm just dealing with bullshit all day long, like putting out fires left and right. It's kind of my job as a broker, but I do not want a phone call. I'd text me first, prep me on what you want, and then let me call you back when it's convenient.
I've got so many things on my calendar and deadlines and everything that I use email as sort of a task list.
Yeah, I
Like
do too.
I
I keep all
don't,
my unread emails at the top, and that's kind of my task list.
yeah. So it's I don't know. Just for me, I don't like getting the text messages because I can just be anywhere and read it. I can be out to lunch and read it, but I don't necessarily think of it when I go back to work. Whereas if I have the email, it's right there. So whatever. To each his own.
Well, one tip that you could do is you could quickly copy and paste that text message, or just email yourself right then and there, because that's what I do. Like
Or
if
they could just not send it.
or they can send it. But if they do, and you're like, shit, I got to get back to this person, I'll email myself, like call Matt Beam back or whatever, because I ignore your phone calls on a pretty regular basis
I'm
too,
sure
and
you
then
do.
I have to call you back. But anyways,
I check it a few times a day just to make sure.
thanks so much for coming on.
Thank
We'll have to
you.
do it again when maybe have a topic to go over, but I just wanted to kind of get into you and that sounded weird. I wanted to get
I
into
wasn't gonna say it.
knowing your background and letting everybody learn about what makes you tick. So I appreciate your time, buddy.
Thank you.